Today, we are at the Ruth and Paul Henning Conservation Area, just on the northwest edge of Branson, and we are going to do the 3.7 mile Henning Homestead Trail.
It is our very favorite trail in Branson. As a matter of fact, it's probably one of our favorite in Missouri. We used to do this a lot when we lived in Branson. We took our son here, goodness, maybe once a week because it's such an awesome trail. When we were Cub Scout leaders, we took our Cub Scouts here. I did an event with my library kids, took my library kids here. Awesome trail, and we can't wait to share this with you and show you all the neat features on the Henning Homestead Trail.
So come along with us, and we'll show you all of the awesome history along this beautiful trail.
The trail starts at the base of Rourke Creek in Branson, Missouri. Over the years, this creek has been pretty treacherous when it rains. It used to wash out the low water bridge that was here that you would cross to get to the trail. And now they have built a new bridge that can't get washed out anymore. Now, when you are coming down across the bridge to get to the trail, you'll see that there is a big rocky area that you have to cross to get down here to get started. And then you'll head over here to the trailhead. At the beginning of the trail, you'll see that there is a sign that shows you a map of the Homestead Trail. And there's a little box that sometimes, not very often, I think in all the times that we have done the trail, maybe twice, the little box has had the guide maps that tell you what all of the stations are at the trail. So we're going to try to do that for you as we travel down the Homestead Trail today.
The first section of the trail is pretty rough, lots of rocks and roots. Look for some orange blazes as you go. There will be 15 stops that are marked along the trail. Stop number 1 is of the sycamore trees that have the bleached white upper branches. And history says that the settlers, as they came through the area, would look for those trees because the sycamore trees and those white upper branches indicated the presence of water.
Stop number 2 represents the Stewart store that was owned by George Stewart. And it was an old 2-story store out here in what looks like the middle of nothing. Kind of amazing to think that there was a 2-story store somewhere out here in these woods. But it was the place for socializing and getting the goods that you needed if you lived at a homestead out in this area. So people would come here to not only buy the goods they needed, like salt and meat and cotton, but they would also trade their surplus goods like eggs and milk. And the surplus goods were shipped off to the north up in Springfield. Now, in 1906, the store was wiped out by a flood. You can tell again by the creek that we were walking in on that this is a very water-filled area when it rains. Still floods to this day, but the store was destroyed in 1906. So in 1920, they built this stone wall to try to prevent the flooding from destroying the store again. But in the late 1920s, ironically, it wasn't a flood that destroyed it. It was a fire. So the store was gone after the 1920s.
Here we are at stop 3, the Cox Homestead. James and Ann Cox and their 8 kids lived here in the mid-1800s. There are still remnants here of their hand-dug well. The children went to Dewey Grove School, which was the first school in the area, and they could only attend 3 months a year because of how much work there was to be done right here on the homestead.
Stop number 4 is the site of the old pole barn that was built by Mr. Hyford in the 1920s after he had purchased the Cox Homestead. He used it to store alfalfa hay that he fed his livestock and cattle. He used the surplus hay to sell in Springfield like the people in the store used to do with their surplus goods.
After stop 4, we go from this smooth dirt trail along the river to rocky uphill terrain.
So this hill is actually an old fire road. So you're going to see that the trail right here is a lot wider, but it is pretty steep up and fairly rocky. But then it's going to level out once you get to the top.
Well, here we are at stop 5, the Red Cedar Grove. The American Eagle Pencil Company harvested most of the cedar in this area in the 1940s. You can still see remnants of some of the large stumps that remain here in the woods. Back in the Depression, some of the men of the area would cut down the cedar trees and haul them to the Gretna Railroad and sell them for only a penny a post.
Well, I can tell that we are definitely transitioning from spring to summer. Spring is one of my favorite times in Missouri because you get to see the Mayapples, which are these cool leafy plants that almost look like an umbrella. And then they have a little hidden surprise in the spring. They'll have a little white flower that blooms underneath them. Now the single ones like this don't have the flower. It's the ones that have the double. And so on this one you can see right here, this is where the flower was. And this is how I know that we are now moving to summer, because the flowers are gone, the leaves are starting to speckle, and now it's gonna get really hot and sticky in Missouri.
We are about a third of the way finished with the trail, and we have not seen a single person. We were the only car in the parking lot, and because this trail is wide open and out in the middle of nowhere, it does give us the opportunity to give Jasper a little bit of freedom and let him run off leash. We keep him within eyesight for sure and on the trail, and that way if we see anybody coming or approaching, we can immediately call him back and hook him up. But it sure is fun to see him have a little freedom.
Stop 6 is the old Jones house. It was an old 2-story house, a rather large one for the time, that you would follow a little cedar-lined trail from the old road up to the house. These stones right here are the remnants of one of the 2 fireplaces that were in the house. And spoiler alert for those of you who are geocachers, and I haven't checked the geocaching site for a long time, but there used to be a geocache hidden here as well. It was one of the first ones our family found, goodness, 15 years ago maybe, longer than that maybe, and got us interested in geocaching. But this is a really interesting site to think that this was somebody's fireplace in a 2-story home out here in the middle of the woods.
Stop 7 is Isaac's place. Reuben Isaac was the temporary sheriff of Taney County, and he was appointed after Galba Branson, the standing sheriff, was shot to death on July 4th, 1889 by baldknobbers.
Stop 8 is the pine plantation. So the pine trees that you see here are the result of a field that had been cleared for farming and then left to revegetate on its own. So there was a pine tree that was left on the edge of the property, and the seeds from that pine tree then resulted in the growth of the pine forest that's behind us. You'll see that now they've added a little side trail off of the Henning forest. A little sign here lets you know this. And there's a little bench back in there that you can take a little rest and maybe have a little picnic.
We are just past the pine forest and we've come to a fork in the road. The fire road continues this way, but we are making a right-hand turn and going on the single track path as we're working our way back toward the parking lot and continuing on our numbered trail. Stop 9 is a hand-dug well that was part of the Isaac's homestead. Can you imagine hand digging a well like this through the limestone bedrock? They had to go oftentimes 30 feet down, and as they would dig, they would line the walls with the stones that they would have cleared from the area fields.
After the Isaac's well, the trail goes from being on that lovely, nice flat part of the fire road to kind of going downhill on very rocky terrain. So you're gonna wanna make sure you're really careful. This is a point where I utilize my hiking sticks a lot. And then we're gonna come out near a little bit of some of the bald knob glady type area. Stop 10 is one of my favorite spots on this trail. In wet weather, which we have had lately, it is a wet weather waterfall. So down on the trail here, you're gonna see some flat limestone, and that's actually how this formation is made, is because the water has carved through the limestone that's so prevalent here in Missouri. And it comes down this area and has carved out this bluff And you've got, right now we have kind of a small trickle waterfall. When you have heavy rain, we've only seen that one time. That was only the one time we were able to get past the rushing creek to come up here in a floody time to see the water really flowing. But it's kind of fun to hear the water trickling in the background. This is an area that you want to be really safe with your pets and kids. Back this direction before you get to the waterfall, you're going to see that the trail kind of splits off, and there is going to be a sign that tells you to take the trail to the left, not the path that's on the right. The path on the right is right next to the bluff, and if you've got small children or dogs that are not well under control, even on a leash, that could be pretty treacherous. You're also going to want to be careful when you cross the limestone down there because it's very slick and there is water there much of the time. So be careful with little kids and pets and yourself. You don't want to fall and hit your head on the limestone. But beautiful spot, one of my favorites on this trail.
Well, here we are at stop 11, which is a wide open glade, also known as a bald. And even though this is a harsh environment with the open sun, it's also very fragile with very thin soil. Cedar is an aggressor to this type of terrain, and this area, this open glade, is actually managed by the Conservation Department to remove the cedar trees in order to preserve the open bald or glade.
We are hiking this trail in the middle of May, which honestly, for most places in northwest Arkansas and southwest Missouri, if you're going on narrow single track trails this time of year, they are so covered in poison ivy that unless you're wearing long pants, long sleeves, long socks, you're gonna get really itchy. But the nice thing about this Henning Trail is that the trail is pretty wide, even in the sections through the woods, and we just have not had to worry at all about poison ivy today. So we're actually hiking in shorts, which is nice because it's gonna be 80-something degrees today. Stop 12 is, guess what? Yet another homestead. That's why it's called the Homestead Trail. So this one was built by NEWT Cox, and he had 160 acres where he built his home out in this area. Trails in these.
Farming in this area was super tough with all of the trees, the growth, and especially the rocks. And so anytime that a field had to be cleared, the rocks were moved to form these rock walls. And just an amazing sight to think of how much work went in to creating this rock wall. Stop 13 shows the boundaries of the old field. This was cultivated as a field until the 1930s and then left to grow over with trees. But you can see here how the barbed wire has just been sunk into the middle of these trees, and the trees have grown completely around.
Stop number 14 is the last homestead on the Homestead Trail, and it is the Shelton Place. It also has a hand-dug well, and at the Shelton Place, they built a retaining wall to try to pool some of the water from a natural spring, and they used that to try to cool their food. Again, these people didn't have refrigerators, so that was how you kept your food cool back in the homestead days.
You made it all the way. We are at stop 15, the twins. There are two large red oaks. This one is the first of the twins, and unfortunately the other one on the other side of the trail has fallen and rotted, and it is no more. So that we have one of the twins still standing. It is over 24 inches in diameter and 120 plus years old. So it would have just been a seedling whenever the homesteaders that we have highlighted today in this video were here working the land.
Well, we have come full circle on the Homestead Trail. So remember, when you're starting off on this trail and you're coming up the stairway, you want to make sure that you go left if you want to see the sights in numerical order, because it is a loop trail. We hope that you enjoy our adventure today.
Be sure to like and subscribe. We love bringing you these videos because today is an adventure day.